realize that we are trying to treat something here at Hope, which is really an important topic for our industry, for those of us that are in the tech industry, a lot of us, for our education, for our business activity, and for our lifelong activity. It's my great pleasure to welcome the panel for Women in Cybersecurity.
Thank you very much. I am Cindy Cullen. I work at HPE as a cybersecurity strategist, and I will be acting as the moderator as well as involved in the discussion as well. So first, just to kick off, I guess the intent of, at least my interest in having this panel is to really encourage you, to encourage women, be they your wives, your mothers, your children, your sisters, brothers, to actually get women more involved in IT, in STEM, and in cybersecurity. Unfortunately, there's been a decline in the amount of women involved in cybersecurity, so it's gone from 11% down to 10% involvement, which is kind of going the wrong direction. It was interesting. My mother always said that she liked to use Fred Astaire as an example of what it's like to be a woman in the world. And Fred Astaire, and I guess I'm showing my age by talking about Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire was a famous dancer, and he danced with Ginger Rogers. He got lots of positive media attention, and she got very little, but yet she did the same dance, and she did it in high heels and backwards. So in some ways, women have to still deal with that type of issues, but that's just my perspective. I know that's not a shared thought from everybody on the panel. So I will first let everyone on the panel provide a little insight into their perspective and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Debbie Gondek. I've been in the IT industry since about 1999. I've worked for several large financial services organizations in various roles, starting first in a network engineering lab where I coordinated the activities in the lab, so it involved a lot of like physical racking and stacking of equipment, as well as it evolved into a role where I did testing myself, and I attribute my development there actually to the support of a lot of male mentors who helped me learn network engineering at that time. This was 1999. Things were very new. I barely knew what AOL was at the time, and it kind of evolved from there to a point where I could test OSPF and BGP configurations within a couple of years. That led to a role in information security. I found that I really liked trying to break things. In this engineering lab, one goal was to design new technology, but also not design new technology, but to design how we would use new technology within the company, but also to identify where it might break and mitigate that early. So that kind of led to my sort of future in information security. I moved on to a role in information security proper, focused on application security at a time where application security wasn't the focus. It was very early, and really got a kick out of trying to find vulnerabilities. Moved on to a new organization where I helped found an ethical hacking organization within the bank to test applications within the development life cycle. Did that for several years, and participated in several mobile development, security development projects. and then moved on to what's my current role in operational risk management, where although I'm not directly involved in cybersecurity, my role is more of a governance role, so overseeing the information security processes and activities within a different bank. So from I guess a second line of defense perspective. That's my career in a nutshell. Didn't really speak to being a woman yet. Should I do that now, or would you like to?
Sure.
So, I don't feel as though I've nothing overt has ever happened to me to either advance or I guess stop my career. Although very early on, I was in, as I mentioned before, in this lab where I spent a lot of time with a lifting heavy equipment and using a drill to screw it into racks and receiving shipments and things like that. And I thought I should wear a skirt at the time, because that was what women did. But I was in this very physically hands-on environment, and I really struggled with what to wear to work. It seemed like such a silly thing, but most women were dressed a certain way, but I was doing this activity that didn't lend itself to to wearing a skirt all day. So that was kind of the first moment that I realized, oh, I'm a woman here, and not everybody is. I'm different somehow. And I also realized that I had a slightly different challenge when, as I got better at things. On the one hand, I think the men I worked with probably gave me. So I had a counterpart who was male, and he, we were pretty good friends also. But at times, I know he felt that I actually had an advantage being a woman, because we were both there to learn. But men paid more attention to me trying to teach me. It was almost an academic environment where it was a lab, so you had people who just loved technology and loved sharing their knowledge, but they also, I think, preferred sharing their knowledge with the girl over the guy. So it actually worked to my advantage at that point in time. I really got a lot of help. But at a certain point, I also felt like my career wasn't going to progress. I kind of was this sort of, isn't she cute? Oh, look at her, look at her test the switch. Look at her, test the firewall. I don't know. It just felt like I felt cute. I felt like somebody's daughter or somebody's niece. I didn't feel like somebody's peer, or I couldn't imagine being perceived as a peer or even a manager of the people I was working around. So it had its advantages, but it also had its limitations. And I did recognize that, I think, through, it was painful recognition, but I eventually, and then also followed my heart to a role in information security, working for a woman at the time, and that was just coincidental. Although I will say that I think she appreciated me in a way that other managers of mine haven't, and it's hard to know what to attribute to being female versus what to attribute to being, a certain age or a certain personality type or a certain race or a certain nationality or where you're from. It's really hard to know. But I do think that this particular manager who I actually work for now, again, I feel like having women role models or mentors or sponsors provide, or having more women around allow you to increase the odds that you'll be appreciated if you are a woman. Just because women do have shared experiences that men don't have, and I'm sure men have shared experiences that women don't have, but I think it increases the chances of being appreciated, and I think we all want to be appreciated for what we do, whether it's financially or in terms of promotions or just in terms of being given challenging assignments. So I've had more success with that, I think, with some of my female managers. I think I'll probably stop for now. I'm sure I'll jump in later, but I'm going to give somebody else a chance.
Hi, my name is Renee Pollack. I recently graduated from Pace University with an undergrad degree in IT, and I just started my first full-time job last month. I was an intern for a financial firm for the past 2 summers and also consulted for them during the school year. And I also worked in a lab. We did a lot of forensics in terms of mobile malware, reverse engineering. We looked at cellular networks and even just like general systems and application security and tried to break that. I kind of always loved information security. I'm kind of a geek at heart. I love puzzles, I love questions and playing with things. So this field really fed that curiosity in me. But in the lab, I was the only female, and in many of my classes, I was one of the only females. And I never felt any discrimination or any kind of differences. If anything, I felt that people really just cared about your technical skills and your experiences, and if they felt that you had the answer to the homework assignment, or if you could break something or build something, that they would go to you. And so I felt like a lot of my male colleagues and peers would actually come to me and say, hey, Renee, can you help me out? And it wasn't due to anything else other than just like experience or the way I thought of something. Maybe the only difference is that I think women sometimes think differently or approach a problem slightly differently, which allows us to kind of give a new angle to a dilemma. But I've been very lucky, and I'm working both in academia and in financial services, and have really fantastic colleagues, bosses, mentors, all who really kind of encouraged my curiosity and really kind of pushed the technical side and didn't really care about anything else, which I really appreciated and hope I continue to experience that when I move forward.
Hi, I'm Morgan Strobel. I work for a large consulting firm here in Manhattan. I am in the technology risk group, and I focus on security and privacy. I had a little bit of a different story. I actually went to school for economics and business, and my first job out of college wasn't the greatest experience. I was bored with what I was doing, and I was at a small boutique consulting firm, and along came a gentleman who started contracting to do some of the security work at the firm. And since he was always in the office and he was always playing with cool gadgets and tools and stuff, I kind of asked him to show me some stuff. And he showed me all sorts of hacking tools and all sorts of crazy things, and I kind of developed a passion for it, and he started taking me to a bunch of security conferences and really pushed me to learn more, read a lot of books. He met me after work numerous days a week and on weekends just to train me, to get me to be able to apply for a job in information security. He happens to be in the room right over there. So I ended up getting to the point where I felt like I could apply for my first job, and obviously the company was like, well, you don't have a job experience, but you seem to have a lot of passion and a lot of drive, so we'll give you a shot. So I happened to be one of the few women who was in the technology risk security group. However, since I do work for a consulting firm and I travel pretty much every week, we get to work with teams from all the other offices, and there are other women in those groups, so I have had a chance to work with all of them. But I haven't, in my company, I actually haven't had any issues with being a woman at all. They've all been very accepting of me. They've all helped me in so many ways. I think the only time there were ever issues was just, I guess, because I didn't come from a security background, they wanted me to prove myself. So I definitely had to work really hard to show them that I do know what I'm talking about and that I am willing to learn. As long as you put in the effort, they're more than willing to help. As far as discrimination, well, I have had several instances of that because I do travel to many clients. I'll just give you an example. I went to a client one time, and it was one of our longtime clients, and we were in the room, and we were going to do a network security assessment and internal penetration test. And the CISO walked in and said, "Oh, you brought a female this time." And no one really knew how to react. He walked out of the room right after it happened, and we all just looked around and started cracking up because we kind of find it comical that people still say these things these days. But I think you're always going to run into situations and people who are going to say those things. It's not every time. I had another experience where I was going to do a data center tour. I do a lot of third-party vendor security reviews. And I was meeting the facilities team and the data center team down in the lobby, and it was a glass lobby, so I had been called in from the security of the parking lot that I was, entering the building. And I could see all their faces when I was walking down the stairs because they knew the next person who walked in was obviously who they called in to do the data center tour. And they were all facing me and had their jaws dropped to the floor, and they all turned around and looked at each other as if I couldn't see them. And I walked in, and I think I don't hide my emotions very well, so the look on my face probably surprised them as well, and they said, "Oh, sorry, we just thought you were going to be a man." And I was like, I had to bite my tongue a little, but I have to admit I did say, "Sorry to disappoint you." And they said, "Oh no, we just meant because like Morgan is a man's name." And I said, "We had a kickoff call." But so those are, honestly, those are the only 2 times that I've ever really felt it. I'm sure I've been oblivious to other little things here and there, but those are the 2 times that really stuck out.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Subert. I'm actually an information security and compliance person. Like Morgan, I actually started out as an accountant. I got a little bit bored with that, and I actually got hired by a financial services firm as an information security manager. I met 3 major requirements. I could walk, I could talk, and I was reasonably priced. I moved on, from there to really just do help firms with their business continuity, disaster recovery. At the financial services firm, believe it or not, I was actually able to bring up their ATM system. We were actually able to process transactions, so that was a big win for us. I was actually very proud of that. What I do now is mostly compliance work. I write policy and awareness for the users for the firm that I currently work with. We talk a little bit about discrimination. I'm a little bit older than these 2 here, believe it or not. Early in my career at the financial services firm, I came into work one day and I was introduced to the new CISO. And I was like, I didn't even know we were hiring a CISO. And he happened to be about 2 years out of college, and at that time I had 2 of my 4 children, and I was like, oh, well, I really would have had to like that job. And 2 years later, he left, and well, when he was hired, they said, he's a little young, you have to hold his hand, you have to show him the reins, because you know what you're doing, he really doesn't. So, yes. So he left, and I was like, oh, I'm going to throw my hat into the ring, right? 2 years, I've, helped him. And I walked in, and my coworker had the job. Again, another guy. And they said, he's a little rough around the edges, understatement. And can you hold his hand? Can you help him along and show him the reins? And I was like, hell no. And I hung out for a while, got my year-end bonus, got my stock awards, exercised my stock options, and I moved on. The gentleman who got the job, still a nice guy, gave me a reference when I was moving on. No qualms about that. But that really bothered me, and I really didn't think it was fair. Where I am now, I have a team of 16 people. 3 of us are women. They are very supportive. I have no problems with them. It's the people outside of the group that I work with. Sometimes I feel like when I'm coming what's the word you guys use? Sometimes findings, or things that they don't want to hear from me. I have to prove myself. I have to prove that I have the knowledge to say what I have to say, because I'm a woman, and they may not think I know what I'm talking about. I guess that's it, and we can talk a little bit more. You want to go? You go.
Well, so actually, I thought Deb brought up actually an excellent point, which is that there are some times in which it is a big advantage to be a woman. So one of my first roles was actually doing assessments of both physical and IT, and so we would. At that time, I worked in the telecom industry, so we would go around to knocks, and especially in the South, these are supposed to be super secure facilities, and I would walk up to the door. Somebody would hold the first door open. It was a man trap. Somebody would open the second door for me. So sometimes there are great advantages, and even Kevin Mitnick understood that. He hired hookers. But they weren't doing what you would think they were doing. They were making telephone calls for him because people trusted women, and so they're. I found that one of the best ways to do social engineering, when I was trying to show organizations that they had weak systems in place, I would call up the admin for senior executives and act like I was going to cry because, I was going to lose my job because I did something wrong, and please let me have his password, and they would hand it over. Or another example was, we'd like to put our business cards around in the offices. And so as a woman, it was very easy for me to walk in and around organizations and, walk into the CEO's office, put my business card under his keyboard. A lot of times their computers were not locked. And so there was, so it's not all negative that, women in cybersecurity. So maybe anybody else have some positive experiences, that there was a real advantage to being a woman?
I find sometimes some of the guys, look, I have a CISSP, and I don't remember everything from the exam and everything, right? Who remembers everything, right? So I have a degree in finance and I have a master's in MIS, and I really don't remember everything. Plus, I'm working on freshman math, and that just boggles my mind. But I find that the guys will help me, like, refresh my memory and they'll sit there and I'm like, okay, yeah, fine, all right, fine, I'll get that. And they will take the time, to answer my questions. And it's just not them. The two other women on my team, and they will take the time to answer my questions and, be patient, because sometimes I just look at them and I get the deer in the headlights look, and I'm like, yeah, all right, and then I'm like, yes, thank you, I appreciate it. And it goes both ways. And I like that. I like the camaraderie. I think that's really great.
Go ahead.
So I have to agree with the social engineering aspect of internal penetration tests when I'm not staffed on them, but it is in New York. Occasionally, they will call me and say, "So what are you doing today? Like, what job are you on? Do you want to come help us out?" Because women tend to have an advantage of getting in physical social engineering, as well as some of our phone ploys as well. But also, I think that internally at my company, I think that there's a lot more competition amongst the boys. So a lot of times we call it hoarding. So when they create new tools or discover something new or a new way in or whatever it may be, they kind of keep it to themselves to use. But they have no problem sharing it with me, I've found. So a lot of times I've kind of aligned myself with people that are willing to help me and willing to share their knowledge with me rather than the ones who are hoarding their information.
Yeah, we have at our firm like a women's network, and a lot of the more junior people like myself have access to many of the partners and people who we wouldn't have the opportunity to talk to and get advice from, because there's no men network. So they have these like functions, I don't know, fairly frequently, and they pretty much say, ask us a question or just go out and do a wine tasting and just kind of enjoy that other advice and recommendations and just experiences from women who otherwise we wouldn't have the opportunity to talk to. So I found that really, really helpful.
Another advantage, I think, having been, the only female in the room so often in my life, even before I was in IT, I studied philosophy and math, and it was the same thing. I was always the only woman, it seems. You kind of get used to being the outsider in a sense. And I think the advantage of that position is it lends itself to being, naturally having an independent perspective on things. And there are certain roles in information security or risk in general where being independently minded is an advantage. Because a lot of times you're tasked with looking at something that's, we've been doing this forever, but your job is to find the vulnerability in what's, in an established process, to pick out problems and to find the flaws in what, the establishment has been doing. So I think that, at least for myself and, perhaps a lot of other women or, other people who have kind of been outsiders in their environments, may have sort of naturally developed this skill or refined the skills around independent thinking.
Okay, thanks. So now we'll move on to the work-life balance and having, how to manage having a family. So when I had children, I basically put them in daycare from almost day one, well, actually 6 weeks. And some people tried to do a guilt trip that, what are you doing? And my attitude was, hey, they're better off in daycare than spending 24 hours a day with me. They'll just get to be too neurotic. So for me, it was never an issue because I could have cared less what other people were thinking. So I guess, would you like to address your perception of work-life balance? Anyone can take it?
Sure. So I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. So in the last couple of years, I've been, onslaught with work-life balance, new challenges on work-life balance. I guess I've always had the work-life balance challenge even before kids, because I always wanted to do something outside of work. But most recently it's been the how to raise kids challenge, and like Cindy, I had no qualms about sending my kids to daycare, and people do. They're always like, oh, I'm sorry, your kids are in daycare. I'm like, are you kidding? There was no question. But I did worry. I had kids later than a lot of people do. In part because of fear of the impact on my career. But it's actually, in many ways turned out to be a positive thing. There reached a point where I felt like, the farther along I got in my career, the more the women, and men too, that I interacted with had kids. And so there was this club that I couldn't participate in because I couldn't talk about my kids. It felt like I needed to have kids to kind of, keep up with the Joneses. It wasn't about talking about your car anymore. It was about talking about your kids. That's not why I had kids, but it certainly, it actually, I think, helped my career in that respect. Made it easier to relate to a lot of people. At the same token, the reality is, you're much more, for less time. I have to leave the office earlier than I would like sometimes, and I just have to cut corners. In whether it's not always work that I'm cutting the corner in. It's shaving off things in different aspects of life. I happen to have had supportive companies for both of my children. In fact, the job I'm in now, I got a new job that was also a promotion while I was 5 months pregnant. So it can be done. They took me on. It worked out well. And on my maternity leave, I joined a mom's group. And one of the common experiences that came up was surprisingly, having children or going on maternity leave can actually help your career in the sense that people, your absence or the threat of your absence or the threat of your non-return, can lead managers to realize how much they appreciate you. And I met a number of people who got promoted while they were out on maternity leave or offered better jobs so that they would come back. It can happen. And it's a challenge, but it's not all negative, I guess.
I kind of feel like I'm still a kid myself, so I'm not really sure if I have the best experience. But my current work-life balance is when I go home from work, I want to do more research. I kind of want to learn more. I go to the office and I see the potential of this tool and that tool, or learning that language. And so I always kind of want to go home and be on the computer even more, but apparently something called a social life that other people enjoy. So I'm trying to have some more non-computer experiences, meet people who are outside of the field, because not only is it good for my sanity, but it's also good to get new perspective on how people use technology and just to get kind of the non-hacker thoughts, because I feel we look at things in a unique way, and people look at us and say, oh wait, what about this, what about that? And so that's kind of been my challenge.
So I also do not have any children, but I have been fortunate enough to meet someone who works as many hours as I do. So we've really been making it work, and I feel like things will probably change when I do decide to have kids, but luckily I think that there's a push to keep women in the workforce. So there's a lot of flexible working arrangements that a lot of companies are willing to offer so that we can stay working and still have a family. So I'm looking forward to that, so I can continue to work and learn, because as we all know, security is ever changing, and so can't really afford to sit back and keep learning.
I actually have 4 children. I have 2 in college, 2 in high school. Like Cindy, mine hit daycare at, actually 8 weeks. I've worked through, I'm still working. People, they felt sorry for me because I missed a lot of their firsts. My take on it is I try to see what I called their lasts. They graduated from elementary school, 4th grade, middle school at 8th grade, and then obviously high school at 12th. And so I tried to make all the big events at that time, like 4th grade graduation, 8th grade graduation, and then I'm choking up. Senior year, as many of their sporting events that they had. They all play soccer, their marching band, ran track, my son played lacrosse. So I tried to get to all of that. I work for a firm, very, very supportive. I have a sick child, I can leave. I'm able to work from home. People on the team have children. They're actually wonderful. And I'd like to say, because I'm older, the thought process has come a long way. Early on in my career, when my older 2 were younger, it was not as user-friendly. I also feel I'm a role model for my children, and my husband and I, it's a give and take. We're partners. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I feel like it's good for I have 3 girls and 1 boy. It's good for them to see how it works together. I was always the bad parent. I dropped off at daycare. He was the good parent. He picked up. Yeah, but it wasn't easy, right? He picked up. He cooked dinner. He did homework. By the time I got home from work, bath was done, and they were on the way to bed. So, I quote unquote, maybe had it easy during the week, but then his thing was he got to play soccer. on the weekends. We took turns sleeping late. So, it's difficult. And everybody does it differently. You just have to kind of like figure out what works for you. There is no right or wrong answer. It's just what works for you.
Great, thanks. So maybe we'll now open it up to questions from the audience. If you have a question, please come up to the mic up here. Actually, I can't see anything.
Hey, my name is, is this on? Can you hear me? Cool. Hey, my name is Matthew Weaver. Thanks so much. It's really cool to see an all-female panel at Hope. It's funny, I'm going to say one quick thing about my experience, then I have a question. My experience is that the men's network is literally the whole rest of the world. Like, it's super handy. Like, that thing is way useful. So, like, let's hook it up, right? My question is, so one of the superpowers I have from my experience is probably maybe different than yours, is that I can say anything to anyone. I have been in a lot of rooms with a lot of old white dudes who make bad decisions because there's a homogenous perspective in that room, right? Like, that is what is causing a lot of stuff to not work. What is the most useful thing that I can do with that voice to be helpful to you? Thanks. I'm going to sit back down and get out of the way.
I guess just, you have to realize in the room there's different voices, right? So there's what I call legacy people that have been there a while, and then there's the younger ones, and like people like me who have not been there as long, but I'm more of maybe like a business person, and I will think a little bit differently because I'm half business, half security, because I came from a business environment. And like Morgan and Renee said, they have a different take on things. It just maybe not listen. What is it? You listen, but hear what we have to say. And even if they are, because I sometimes feel like if they're younger, people automatically discount what they have to say, and it's not even just women in general. It's the younger ones. I feel like you sometimes discount what they have to say, and they actually are very, very smart, and they bring a different perspective to it, I guess, and they have value. They add value.
And I'd say that also, if someone, and this is really true of I think across the board, be it men or women, that if somebody is being particularly quiet, to try to work with them to draw them out so that they feel more included in the discussion.
Yeah, or you could also request, sometimes, and I know for me, I need to kind of get comfortable with my surroundings. So I might not say something the first or the second or the third meeting with a group of people, but maybe by the fourth meeting I will, or maybe if there's a document to review, I'll respond written to start, to kind of get a feel for the crowd I'm dealing with. So I'd say just give folks a chance, invite them a second or third time, and invite feedback in different formats.
I think also a lot of our communication and a lot of our ideas come from non-meeting settings. So when you go out to, thank you. Wow. Thanks. So when you guys all go out for drinks after work, invite everybody. We have similar interests than you. We're not, completely different people. And so we can talk about things in a more casual environment, and sometimes you can have some great ideas in that way too.
Yes.
Hey, first of all, thank you. That was really awesome and inspirational, all of you. Do you ever feel like you're tokenized or asked to unfairly represent something on behalf of all women, maybe even at the expense of your own personal experience or just in general, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to sign up for women in security anything. There was actually an article on Hacker News not that long ago saying why I will never do a women in security talk. And it was interesting because you never want to be that token person. I always want to be viewed as someone who knows security, as a technician, as someone with analysis and things to offer, not as a female. but I also feel that women kind of need to come together, and we can kind of be more powerful together. And so there's that kind of lack of voice, and so someone has to do it, and hopefully we won't be tokenized, but there's always that risk, and I think we all try to avoid that as well.
I have to agree with Renee. I'm always hesitant as well. However, I guess without us doing things like this, it's not going to attract a lot of women to join us. Because I think that the thought of being in IT or in security never really crossed my mind growing up. I think nowadays it's more so than when I was younger, but I never even thought of that for a second. It wasn't until, Tom stepped into the office that I worked in and kind of brought it up that I was even like, oh, wow, like this is so interesting. So I think that without, sharing our experiences, you're not going to get as many women to be involved. So I think that's why I'm here.
Next question.
I've been to a number of talks like this, and think this was refreshing. I appreciate your perspective. My formal background is in biology, and I worked in a lab where I was the only male. So I think that it's equally uncomfortable to be on the other side of the equation as well. Anytime you're kind of the minority in a group of any kind, it can be uncomfortable. As a parent of 2 boys, I see, so I'll take my kids to chess camp, and they're mostly boys in the camp. And I'm seeing actually more of a discrimination with kids. If they go to gymnastics, for example, they may be one of the few males in the class. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on whether it's appropriate to be concentrating on women, adult women, or whether we need to be focused more efforts on when women are kids, on the parents themselves, enforcing the idea that a little girl is just as welcome to be in a chess camp, for example, as boys are. That's everything.
I think all children should be encouraged to do everything. It's like I always tell my girls they're beautiful. They don't need makeup to change the way they look. I've always told my son he's good looking, and I told them they could live stream, so I'm probably embarrassing them now. I've always told them they could do whatever they want as long as they set their mind to it, and it didn't have to be anything stereotypical. They should you just need to encourage whatever their passion is, just support them. Even if it is something that would be outside of what is, I guess gender specific. I mean, what we do is, I guess, not considered like a woman thing, and we're very passionate about what we do. We love what we do. And I embarrass my children when I'm checking out at the store, because I talk about pin pads. It's just, we love what we do. Just encourage them. Just want them to be happy.
And I would say that we really need to do the whole gamut, because you're right. It's very important to begin addressing it at the younger ages, so that girls have, and actually all children, especially in the U.S., their math tends to be very weak. But to actually encourage everybody to become very good at math, because it's a basic building block of the whole technology space. And there's a lot of adult people who also, I think, really need to be encouraged to realize that this is something that they can do, that it's not totally beyond reach. For example, I had an undergraduate in liberal arts. My husband always tells me, don't tell anybody that, and a master's in computer science. And so it's possible to even if you have undergraduates that's not, and we have examples here of people that didn't even go get the master's, that they basically did a career transition. And so we need to encourage people to come into the cybersecurity space.
Okay, I want to address what Renee said about being the token female. I find myself at times in that position as well, but I also utilize social engineering because it works really well. But what I was curious about is, what do you find has been your experience in the workforce as far as other women? Because this industry can be very competitive. Some fields, women can have their issues with other women, and I was wondering what your experiences have been with that. Guys aside, sometimes it's worse.
I mean, I've been really lucky. We have some females on my security team, and they've all been, they're more senior than I am, which doesn't say much, but they have great experiences in a wide variety of former careers. And everyone's been really supportive and very much, like, if I have a question, they will happily answer it. And I feel that in general, even for no matter what, like what firm you're at, finding another female who's in the space just to kind of talk to and kind of feel that you're not the only woman in the world who likes security is helpful. But yeah, I've been extremely lucky to have a really fantastic team, and there's been no competitiveness. It's really, really great.
I find I have run into some women who are not particularly supportive. They're not the majority of people, but you know, on a rare occasion, I have run into that. Next question.
Hi, I'm an independent architect consultant, and usually when I work for like Fortune 100, we have tier 1 vendors, and so it's sort of a bit of a preamble to my question. I run into interesting challenges when, across my career, like 25 years, of ways that I might be shut down when you want to point out a flaw in a proposed architecture design, including one of the largest financial services company. We're one of the tier 1 vendors who owns all of the IT in financial services. Actually, because I'd been brought in as a SME, but when I pointed out something, it came down from the top. Because I worked for business, I was a business person and therefore was no longer allowed to use technical terms in meetings. They couldn't keep me from the meetings, but I wasn't allowed to use technical terms. I was just wondering, what I had to do was find, I think, pull on the feminine side as to how to do my job. And have you found that yourself, that sometimes just being a female, that there are ways that you address challenges, especially ones that, you know, otherwise might be like head to head? How has being a female benefited you?
I was in a meeting once, and the person that was supposed to make a decision on an architecture decision on something someone was proposing, I knew he was listening with half an ear, and he actually said yes to it, and I knew it wasn't the right decision. And I am allowed to use technical terms. And I said to him, and I addressed him by his name, and I said, you know, sometimes I don't know really what I'm talking about. And actually, he laughed, and now I had his attention. I said, can I just repeat what I think he said? You know, the gentleman said, and he said, yeah. And I said it in non-technical terms, and his response was, oh yeah, hell no. And you know, it's just I don't know. You just kind of, sometimes I just play, I guess, dumb. I guess.
I took the blonde approach.
Yeah, yeah.
And ask the very naive questions that then highlight the design flaws, right?
Right.
And then it's like, Jim, come over here. I just discovered this big problem.
Yes, you just kind of like play dumb, and you
done.
ask the questions, and it just obviously then the flaw will come to light.
Yes.
It's also known as a Socratic method.
And that's also how I prefer to it. Yes. So you've used that too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I think we have only
last
2
question.
minutes, so
All right,
one last question.
I'll try to make it quick then. All right, so studies have shown that kids by the age of 5 or 6 have already kind of established what are, girl subjects versus boy subjects. And I'm involved locally in encouraging girls to get involved in STEM careers. And actually, as a 31-year-old, I'm starting to get into the tech field myself. So I guess my question is kind of twofold. It sounds like all of you have had the benefit of having mentors who have helped you get where you are, whether it's working with a 6th grader or whether it's someone like myself as an adult getting into the field. What would you say is the best way to get more women in tech, whether it's cybersecurity or related fields?
I guess I would not say that I've had the luxury of any mentors. And I got into it as an adult, and so it was for me it was a huge challenge, especially having a liberal arts background. But today I think it would be much easier because there is so much information online. You can easily go to the MOOCs, the Coursera's, and take very technical courses. A lot of technology companies have free versions of their products you can download. There's a whole bunch of associations that people can get involved in, so that there's a lot of information out there to really to get involved in. And Tom over there, he loves mentoring people.
Well, I guess the question is more, there are definitely the resources out there, but how do you get women or girls even to be open to that path? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that we have to go out and say, we are willing to be your mentor. I think it's somewhat awkward to go to someone and say, will you be my mentor? I've had mentors, unofficial ones, but they've mostly been friends, and I don't think I'd ever say, hey, will you be my mentor? I think it's great to have either a formal or informal process where you're like, here's my life, here's my advice, here's some fun things to do, and if you have any questions, I'm always there. I think you have to just go and say, I'm always here, and have that door open.
Okay. So we're given the time signal. So any last words from everybody? 30 seconds or less.
I'll just say thank you.
I actually just want to quote my father, which says, just to please treat others as you would like to be treated. That's it, and thank you.
And thank you very much. Thank you.